it's me, Jay, your DM. I use he, him.
I'm Jerika, she, her.
And I'm Air. I use he, him.
And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom.
Whoa. Got a lot of wind going on there.
I'm bringing that ASMR content that is so hot. I was watching Jeopardy
You're
last
always
night.
on the cutting ASMR edge.
I was watching Jeopardy last night, and ASMR was one of the questions, and I was like, wow, amazing.
The olds have discovered it.
They have. That means it's not cool anymore.
It was never cool, first of all. It's just kind of a thing that people, need, I guess.
It's very refreshing. Why don't we talk about the amazing @TwittySuch?
Oh,
our friend
yes.
Hadeel. Yes, who...
Is she officially our friend? Because that would make me
hope
really
so.
happy. It looks like she had a really awesome PAX West, too.
It really does.
I count them proudly among the number of friends that I claim to have.
Haha.
Her and the rest of the Crunch Coven, I believe, is the crew name they have gone with.
Great. That's awful. I hate it.
What?
So anyway.
I think it's quality content.
What do you hate about it? Let's probe deeper.
Every time I think of crunch, I think of Griffin McElroy biting that banana.
Oh, I don't have that association at all.
Oh, it's got such a
I
bad
can
crunch.
see where you're going there.
Anyway, so 2 weeks ago, we had the wonderful privilege of sitting down with Hadeel, and we talked a lot, too much, for one podcast. And so we are now going to get to the second half of that wonderful, wonderful conversation between Hadeel and Lipicheski, where they discussed the difficulties and benefits of playing D&D with children.
The triumphs.
You know, Air, listen, if you want to do this, it's all yours.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I don't mean to interject.
No,
I'm done now.
it's yours now. This is your burden.
I take it, I shoulder that with aplomb, and it is my mantle now. It is my hair shirt to
Leave
wear.
your plums at home.
Listen, they were in the icebox. They were so sweet and delicious.
Plums are delicious, and sometimes they look like butts. This message brought to you by Jerika.
This is brought to you by the Maryland Council for Plum Consumption. Go out today and buy plums.
Sometimes they
Critical.
look like butts.
Your ad here.
Oh, man.
That Maryland County is paying a sweet penny.
They're great. Anyway.
Plums are great. So yes, Lee Pacheski, a teacher himself, runs a after school or lunchtime D&D club for some of the students at his school. And Ethan Schoonover, who is a teacher who also does such in the Seattle area, was running a D&D camp of which Hadeel, I believe, was a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started rapping about how cool it was to introduce kids to D&D and to play D&D with the next generation. So that is what we are getting into in this second half.
Yeah, it was a really good conversation because it not just covered the wonderful time you have playing with kids, but it also got to the difficulties and the risks involved with taking on a game with children and the kind of responsibility you as an adult have when you do this sort of thing. And I don't think that gets talked about much. So it was really interesting to hear, and it honestly opened my eyes to what you're opening yourself up for and how patient you need to be and that kind of thing. It was really wonderful, and I think you guys are going to get a kick out of it. So without further ado, here you go.
I would like to turn the wheels just really quickly because this is like a personal huge thing of mine, because I also I run Dungeons and Dragons groups at my own school. And when I saw that you had worked with Ethan Schoonover, who I have a giant super man crush on for his work. And
bro crush.
Bro, you crush hard.
It's a bromance.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
That bromance.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's not a bromance yet. It's not mutual.
It's not...
Ethan Schoonover is not returning our calls.
Bro pining.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's it. Bro pining.
Bro pining.
Now there you go. Now it's getting really romance novel.
And I'm gonna turn it. I'm gonna pivot on this one just a bit. Less about me.
You're saving it.
Yep. But you did some really cool work with him in the Dungeons and Dragons camp, which for people who haven't seen Hadeel's blog, we're going to post about it. So we really recommend that you go and check that out because there's some incredible stuff about D&D and just her in general because she's wicked. But you talked about it a little there, but could you tell us a little bit about how you became involved with him, the Dungeons and Dragons camp for girls, and just your experience with all of that?
First of all, Leap, I'm very cool, and I really appreciate you finally acknowledging. I'm very cool.
It was about damn time.
It was about time that my brilliance is recognized. But okay, so my background is in education, and I don't remember when Ethan and I met online. We met via Twitter, and somebody had sent it into my timeline, maybe tagged me in it, or it just popped up. And I saw it, and I was like, this is so important. If there's anything I can do, whether it's like donating like money or items to your class, please let me know. If you need like curriculum or assets or whatever you need, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you out. Take my money. Please take my money.
Take my money.
Yeah, because you had kind of a difficult time in high school getting
so
into
bad.
D&D.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah,
and that was
so-
the thing, is like, I thought it was really important to like shower these girls with praise, and I want their first experience with Dungeons and Dragons to be a positive one. Yeah, I was really interested in what Ethan was doing as a teacher with Dungeons and Dragons, because it didn't start out as just like a D&D club. It was almost like a creative writing class, and I was like maybe adamant about being involved to the point of being pushy. But as like somebody who threw themselves into fantasy as a child, and even now as an adult, I know how this kind of environment can be really important in nurturing to children. So I was like, do you want money? I give that. And then I found out what he was doing at Lake Washington Girls Middle School, which is very close to me. And I was like, can I bring snacks? I would like to just chat. So he's like, yeah, come to the school and we'll chat. And then he told me about the summer camp, which he hadn't posted about on Twitter. He was like, yeah, do you need books, or do you need an extra hand? And he's like, I would love one. I flipped the table at the Katsu Burger, but yeah, I was super excited to be involved, and I may be doing like the after school program come fall. We'll see.
I'm
I really
so
want
jealous.
to, though.
I want to send my kids cross border to that school.
Could you imagine being a little girl in grade school and freaking Hadeel is coming in and like talking to you? I would just flip my shit.
Jerika, I have two
It's
daughters, and like, yeah, I'm having like a real emotional dad moment right now. It would be so cool.
Well, Leap, you're providing that quality experience to some kids anyway, so you know.
Yeah.
You're the Hadeel of Ontario.
It's like Spider-Man. There are more than one.
There's, you know
Yeah,
what? I might
exactly.
put that on my Twitter tag, Ontario's
Like,
Hadeel.
you're the Spider-Gwen
The
of
Spider
Hadeel.
Gwen of Hadeel. I'm honored. It's an honor. So, Hadeel, you mentioned that like you were part of the camp. You were running games. There was some improv. For people who might not have run Dungeons and Dragons or any fantasy-based game for young people or young women,
This is going to be a very confusing podcast for them.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, welcome. But like, what advice would you give to people who are looking to start playing with like their kids or with in an after-school program?
The first thing I really want to get across to people who want to do this, because I've seen some other people say that they want to start doing this, which is great, and I know that their heart is in the right place. But one, Leap, I'm sure you know, children are a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And it requires a type of patience that not everybody has. Just because you're good at Dungeons and Dragons and you can play with adults doesn't mean you're suited to play with kids. That's fine. Working with children is incredibly difficult, and I'm not trying to scare people away from doing it. I just want the right people to do it. Because a lot of people see children as miniature adults, but that's not the case. Children are their own specific mystical being.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're playing games like this, especially fantasy role-playing, you're going to hear a lot of things from kids that will be, for a lot of people who aren't used to how kids think and how they talk, can be pretty shocking if kids are going through some really rough stuff. And if you want to do games with kids who are disenfranchised or having a hard time, you're going to have to prepare yourself to hear all of those things come out as they role play.
And not react to them in a negative way.
You have
right?
to be really careful about how you react to that, because the only way a lot of kids know how to express their feelings is through projecting it onto others. That's why a lot of kids are like, oh, this kid was really mean. And like, he's probably projecting stuff that's happening to him onto other kids. Like, that's why a lot of really vicious bullies tend to be really young kids, like 6 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's neither here nor there, but you have to really know how to react to children who do that kind of thing. Children also love to push boundaries, especially to people they don't know. So that's another thing that people will have to contend with. And I've tried to explain this to a couple of people. They just think that like you can get a bunch of kids in a room and run a game and it'll be fine. That is false. Even the ones who want to be there, there's just so much going on. But if you want to play with children, you have to understand that they see the world, whether it has dragons or not, very different than adult players. Playing with children is a privilege to me because their imaginations are at their peak and they can think of anything. And they have a lot to say and they'll have a lot of questions and they require patience. But they also require like a certain type of respect. And a lot of that goes with like not reacting negatively if, like, for instance, a kid is saying like this is happening to my character, when the way that they're saying it and their body language is like, no, this is actually happening to me and I want to tell somebody about it, but I don't know how to do it. But this person is a fake pretend me. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people who want to run sessions with kids without having really interacted with kids outside of their family members, because that's a whole other thing. And even I'm willing to give it to people who volunteer with kids in smaller groups. But if you don't really interact with kids on a regular basis, because having bedside manner for children is like a skill that is like, it's like speaking another language. If you don't do it all the time, you will kind of lose that connection. I get nervous when people say they want to do what Ethan and Kat and I have done without any prior experience with children.
Totally.
Because the reason children are a protected class is because they are very different and require very special care. And I always get really nervous when people are like, I'm gonna run this module with my kids, and I'm like, your kids are gonna be fucking terrified. Like, you have got to dial it down. Like, realize that Dungeons and Dragons can be scary. Mm-hmm. And let's say, like, you meet all the requirements, you want to at least give it a shot. The thing is you have to approach children with very low ego. For me, it was really important that my players had fun. That's all that mattered. Mechanic doesn't matter. I never had to fudge a roll. I don't fudge rolls with children because it, like, kind of messes with that really special form of trust that they have. Your job as a DM for young players is just to make sure that they're respecting each other and they're being collaborative. Once you give them the base adventure, they kind of do their own thing, and you just kind of guide them along that path. It's really important that kids know that no question they have is stupid, and that it's okay that they don't know everything. And it's okay to try something out, but most importantly, it's okay for them to fail, and actions have consequences, which is why I really enjoy playing D&D with kids, is they kind of get that whole, if I do this, this will happen, but if I do this, that will happen. Mm-hmm. And another thing, I love Wizards of the Coast. They're my ride or die. Gonna get a tattoo on my bicep.
They're good folks. This is coming from a place of love.
The game is 12 and up.
Yeah.
It is not.
No.
The modules are way too long, even with middle schoolers. Like, and we had a couple that were older. Having them sit down and play Dungeons and Dragons for 2 hours is not a thing. That is not a thing that's going to happen.
No.
It's too long. So there are a lot of really great people. Emmett Byrne is one of them that has modules for small children. My favorite is Ogre and His Cake.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds delightful.
My friend Kayla, who plays Pentar and does all of the art for Trapped in the Birdcage and Hell's Bells, her and I also make modules for younger children.
Are those available on the DM skills by any chance?
They're not. They're actually available through Patreon.
Nice.
Oh, send us that
yes.
link and we will
I saw
tweet
that
it
recently.
away. Yeah.
It's called Bumblefoot Adventures. It's so cute. you have to be a special person to work with kids. It's not easy. And sometimes it's not, I don't want to say that it's not rewarding, but kids can really push your buttons.
It can be exhausting. Yeah.
They can be really exhausting. You know, sometimes they say things because they don't have tact yet and they're not expected to. But if you can make sure that they have a good time and they feel safe and like the things that they do, like their actions matter, then that's the best advice I can give. And it's that children are not miniature adults. They are very special. A lot of them are still at the age where they believe that magic is real. And I would hate for an adult to quash that special sort of imagination because their love of D&D and their ego is more important. But if you're at the point where you want to play with your kids, hopefully you've moved away from that and you know that their experience is more important.
That's a lot of really good advice.
Hadeel, I really appreciate your insight to that because I know that as someone who works with kids a lot, I kind of forget that lens that people who don't work with kids haven't experienced, right? And so kind of pointing out the care and the thoughtfulness that is required is really, really insightful. And I also want to point out, like, if anyone has been following Ethan Schoonover, it should be pretty clear about the thoughtful care that has gone into everything that you both have been doing. It just doesn't happen on its own. Thank you very much for that insight.
Of course, yeah. I would love to see Dungeons and Dragons as a like an actual class to be taken. I'm working with Ethan and Kat on curriculum for that. I would love to see it as some sort of creative writing. Writing is seen as very much like a solo thing, and it can be, but for me, my best work comes when I'm collaborating with others. Like, Kayla and I will call each other and we'll talk, or I'll chat with her on Discord all day, and I'll be like, I had this crazy dream, and this happened, and she's like, tell me more. Like, is my number one hype beam. So, like, I really, that's one of the cool things about, and like, when you play with kids and they like hype each other up, it's so, like, it's so gratifying. It feels like you get to eat ice cream for breakfast, at least for me anyway. Like, watching kids collaborate with each other, help each other, and just, hype each other up is fantastic. If I can share one story about D&D camp.
Yes, please.
We had a student who was, I think she decided to be a warlock. I don't remember the class, but essentially she had mage armor, and she didn't get to stay for the last final boss fight. She had to go home early. They were going on like an actual camping trip. And she wrote a note to our party on a whiteboard that said that she gives mage armor to her party so they would feel strong even though she's not there.
Oh.
And I was like, excuse me, I need to go cry in the club right now. And a lot of them will choose to help each other as opposed to engaging in fights, which I think is really interesting, especially at that age. I will say
demonstration of empathy.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, this is a great thing to do for kids who need to stretch their empathy muscles. I had one of the youngest players, and she was so funny and empathetic, and her and another player wanted to play tieflings. And I was like, okay, well, here's the thing about tieflings is, like, not a lot of people like them. And, just trying to explain prejudice to children is, like, a horrible nightmare that I will probably have to do the rest of my life. And I'm like, and this is what that might feel like. And so we were going around, and part of the adventure was, like, they get, like, special items that are not, like, they don't help them in battle. They're purely cosmetic. Like, one of them got a pair of gloves that feel lucky. And
cool.
One of the tieflings got a crown that made them look like a human.
Oh.
And so the thing that, like, kind of broke my heart was she immediately put it on and didn't take it off the entire adventure.
Oh, my heart.
But yeah, our youngest one was like, you don't have to wear it all the time. And I was like, oh no. I'm so sad.
Yeah.
And empathy, and just another thing I didn't ever really expect to see kids do. I've seen adults do it, and it's pretty common where, like, guys will play girls or girls will play guys. Dungeons and Dragons is really great for kids at the middle school age because they're kind of learning about gender roles at that age. And I had a student who very clearly wanted to experiment with gender and didn't know how to go about it, but did that through Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, that's why it's important. That right there.
Absolutely.
Like, dragons are cool, but have you considered allowing children to express themselves and their identity in this way? In a safe and collaborative environment?
Yeah, and there's so few places where you can really delve into expressing a different identity so safely as when you're behind that veil of make-believe and fantasy.
Yes.
Even if you're not really super comfortable talking about it in the group, if you're playing the character, then there's a layer of separation. It's not me, it's the character. But you really might be working through some of your own stuff, and nobody has to know. It's just kind of your safe space.
And the cover that it provides is like, well, whatever, like, I'm a human woman, that person's an orc, right? Like, what? I don't see the problem, right? And so there's that immediate, like, that just immediate acceptance.
That distance you can establish.
Totally. Yeah. No, for sure.
And that's the thing, is like, a lot of the times, especially with kids who are still towing the line between reality and fantasy, usually if their character does something, it's something that they want to do. And this allows them to do that because they know that they think they're being sneaky. They're not. They think they're being a little bit on the sneaky side, and they, kind of want that ability to put on and take off different aspects of humanity. And I think that's really important at that age.
Yeah, Patrick Rothfuss, he actually says he plays a game with his son that is like D&D, but it's not D&D, because he doesn't want to offer any tools of violence during this game. So he gives his son only magic items that are non-threatening. Like, there's a rope that ties itself. So he throws it across, like, ravine, and it'll tie itself onto a tree across the way, etc., etc. So he has these, like, magical tools that he will help out. And he was talking about, using this as a place that his son could sort of explore fantasy in a very gentle and safe way. And he met this old man just on a journey. It was just a regular NPC, and he started talking to this old man who is homeless, and his son actually brought him back to the farm and gave him his oon space on the farm so that he could, like, build his own home. And Patrick Rothfuss is just like, sometimes as a father, you just gotta cry.
It happens, for sure.
They have an incredible capacity for empathy and warmth if you foster that. If that's what you teach them is a valuable asset. And how we teach them what valuable assets are is super complicated. And that's why I think it's really great that there are people like you guys who are willing to put in the time and really learn how to impart these skills through a game that is something just sort of silly and fun for most of us, but it can be really a tool for exploring a lot of facets, even for very young people and even for adults, that we don't get a lot of opportunity to explore in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of funny that you say, like, oh, it's a silly game, but, like, and not to get, like, super dark, but, like, every other artist and writer online, I suffer with mental illness issues. And I tend to, not so much lately, mostly because it's summer, but I probably have a touch of the seasonal affective disorder. Seattle is pretty bleak.
Mm-hmm.
It gets really gray a very long period of the year.
Very gray for a long time. And I had been toying with the idea, especially around, like, the February time, because I had just gone through, like, a horrible breakup and, like, my life was bad. So I'm like, I'll probably
I feel for you.
It's like, I'll probably just move back home to Florida with, like, my parents who hate all of the stuff that I do.
Oh, no.
And, like, get a job at Target. And then Holly was like, hey, do you want to play D&D with me? And I was like, I don't expect anything to come from this, but absolutely. And then a week later, she's like, cool, we're going to do it on these days. You have to show up. And I was like, awesome. And, like, from
Did
there,
I sign up for a hobby or a job?
No, this is a job. Like,
kind of a jobby.
A job.
Job slappies. I kind of saw it as, like, the bridge between, like, wanting to write fantasy and, like, kind of seeing it as a hobby. I was like, no, this is my life now. So, like, D&D gave me a new lease on life. Try yours today.
I mean, it definitely gave me mine, that's for sure.
Wow, that segment was awesome.
Hadeel's the best.
Totally
and
the best.
I think she's great.
It's pretty cool.
And if you want to get
Pretty
more
cool.
hot Hadeel content in your life,
Well, dial it back.
No. No.
If you'd like to enjoy some more, no.
No.
Hey, so anyway, Hadeel is also on the internet, so you should check out all of Hadeel's good stuff, like Hadeel's Twitter account, Hadeel's Instagram account, Hadeel's blog, and it's always at
4
Twitty.
for 1 Hadeel.
I just got possessed by a ghost in the middle of that sentence.
Hadeel, we're so sorry that your name is so punnable. We apologize so much. I apologize on behalf of these monsters, these beasts.
Oh, yes, our puns are so bad and we should be in word jail, air.
I didn't make a pun, I died. So anyway, if you'd like to enjoy more of what Hadeel has to offer, that's not good.
Enjoy is the wrong verb.
If you are interested in learning more about Hadeel and what she does in the D&D community, please make sure to check out her Twitter, Instagram, and other accounts, all of which are at TwittySuch.
Especially a Tumblr, it's really good.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode. We would like to thank Vince Vept for our theme music called Never Stand Alone. And we would like to thank the stellar Amy T. Falcone for our social branding and adorable faces. Good luck and Godspeed on your wedding. Without you, Amy T. Falcone, we would not have faces. Thank you.
Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
Was
Insight.
check!
da 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 da.
I need me some KSMR, but we'll not talk about
Whoa.
that anymore.
Wait, what?
That's what Chris Straub calls his stream.
Live stream.
Oh my
Sometimes.
god, I thought you were talking about like K as in like kissing. I was like, what? What? That's
Thanks
awful.
for the audible
I'm deleting
demonstration, Air.
Stop referencing it. It's been deleted.
Listen, we had to get this done quick, and I gave you Easter egg content in the
Yes,
first 2
indeed.
minutes.
Yeah.
It's all going in the trash where it belongs.